Welcome to The Secret Witch Show, the podcast providing a safe and alchemical altar space of conversations which help powerful women escape a half-hearted, spiritless society and rediscover the freedom of living a wildly magical life. Every other week, we explore how to cast aside the wounds of shame, guilt, and fear connected with fully being yourself, so you can grant yourself permission to stop hiding, ground soulfully back into your body, illuminate your whole soul desires, tend your soul, rediscover and reclaim your powerful gifts, express your magic, and manifest your wildest alchemy. There's no better place to become who your heart longs to be. This is where we will guide you into liberation. I'm your host, Nicole Barton, and I'm so excited to dive in. Hello, my love. Welcome back to The Secret Witch Show. And as you're listening to this, it is October, the witchiest season of all, and the most magical month, and my favourite month of the year, of course. And so I would love to start this show by inviting you to feel in. Like, if you've been feeling the call to reconnect with your witch, this is the perfect moment to begin. It's the perfect month to begin. I know life can feel so full and overwhelming, but your magic also doesn't need to be stopped or to be rushed. You don't need to do it all. You can just take one tender soul-led step, and that's why I've created the Apothecary. So inside the Secret Witch's Apothecary, there are already 5 slow, self-paced archetypal journeys to help you come home to your power, your magic, your truth. Each one a sacred remedy, each one a mirror of your magic. Maybe you're the Rosa Witch, soft, dreamy, reclaiming self-love. Maybe you're the Golden Aurum Witch, rising into her feminine, soft power. Maybe you're the Wild She-Wolf, choosing freedom and wildness from love. Or maybe the Lunar Witch, intuitive and magical, remembering her magic. Or perhaps your fire is calling, the Flame Witch, ready to alchemize burnout into aliveness and radiance. Whichever path is yours, you can begin gently at your own pace, in your own rhythm. Explore them at nicolebarton.co.uk/membership. And now let's dive in to today's episode. On The Secret Witch Show today, our guest is Sarah Robinson. Sarah is an author and yoga teacher based in the green outskirts of Bath, UK, and she is fascinated by myth, magic and folklore, which is evident in her books, which include the best-selling Kitchen Witch, Food, Folklore and Fairy Tale, The Witch and the Wildwood, and the upcoming Witch Country, Seeking the Witch in the British Landscape, which is flying out on Samhain 2025, all published by Womancraft Publishing. Sarah loves exploring the power of myth, magic and story in both her writing and yoga teaching, and is passionate about helping everyone connect to their own special magic. In this episode, we explore how the land can be a living remedy, how it holds our stories, reflects our wounds, and helps us remember the witch within. Sarah shares her own journey of rewilding wonder and rooting back into the magic of the British Isles, offering reflections on the spirit of the place, ancestral grief, seasonal rhythm, and the healing power of story. We speak to what it means to be held by land and law, how myth helps us navigate modern overwhelm and disconnection, and why there is no right way to find your magic. This is a conversation for the witch who longs to belong and is ready to remember via the land that you already do. Let's dive in. Welcome, Sarah. I am so delighted to have you here. The lovely Lucy Pierce connected us. She's been a guest several times on the show, and I absolutely love her too. So I'm so glad that she's connected us and that you're here, because your work feels like such a beautiful spell of remembering our inner witch, particularly via rewilding in the land. And I know that many secret witches who are listening to this can often feel that kind of deep longing to belong. And yet we also kind of forget that we belong to the earth, to ourselves, to something ancient and meaningful. So I'm really excited to kind of dive into that, especially the lens of like myth and archetypes of places. So yeah, welcome to the show. I'm excited you're here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a real honour, and I'm excited to be here too.
Yay. Okay. Well, as I always do, I was just saying before we pressed record, I believe that people's stories are remedies. And so I would love to invite you to begin to share a little bit about your own journey, particularly with the land and how the land can heal us, how you felt that connection, and anything else that feels relevant around the topic.
Sure. Thank you so much. Oh gosh, where's to start? So my family and I are all kind of from the West Country in England. So I kind of grew up very close to places like Avebury and Stonehenge. And I've kind of just grown up with the sort of pagan energy of the area, I suppose. I went to pagan kids clubs. I was a Morris dancer. I went to folk festivals. So just kind of a very gentle immersion in kind of all things folksy and rural and a little bit mythic. And it would take a very long time for me to kind of gather all these seeds up into what will become my writing work. So it took a long time, I suppose, but maybe you could say it took exactly as long as it needed. But kind of around 35-ish, when I was about 35, this is a great story of Lucy, by the way. So I was about 35 and I went to Glastonbury for the first time, if you can imagine, that I just never made it to Glastonbury. I know.
Wow.
It's absurd. Clearly something was kind of waiting for me, but I went to Glastonbury and it was in bulk, and I wandered into one of the wonderful Goddess Temple shops and picked up a copy of Burning Woman by Lucy H. Pearce and read that, and sort of the rest is history, because I was like, oh, I need to read more about this author and this publishing house, and suddenly kind of everything fell into place as to sort of my next steps on my path. And so, yeah, Lucy has long been connecting magical people together and creating sparks. But I've already rambled off what the question is. But I think my point was Lucy was an integral catalyst to it. And the land that I'm from, which is the West Country, is also a very integral part of my journey of writing. And I sort of started with books that were connected to my yoga background as well. So as long as I've been, a Morris dancer and folksy child, I was about age 7 when I started those. I also started yoga. So I kind of have been mixing Eastern and Western practices for a very, very long time. So my writing journey started by combining the two. So Yoga for Witches and Yin Magic and Enchanted Journeys are the first 3 books, and they're all kind of woven around bringing East and West sort of together, but only in just kind of my own personal way. And just kind of finding my own path with those magical practices. And then from there, I've slowly kind of worked my way all the way back home to my latest book, Witch Country, which is very much the British Isles. So it's very much that I've come home to focusing on my immediate magical surroundings. So it's been an interesting journey, long and winding, as they always are, I suppose. But yeah, the land has paid a part in it all, but in sort of different ways, and maybe ways I didn't realize at the beginning.
I love that so much, and I'm curious to dive into the different ways that it has. There's just so much resonance. I love that that you were kind of born in such a magical place, and so that's kind of almost like you're born into this beautiful place that's a remedy for your witch. So I love that. There was something that occurred to me as you were speaking, though, which was that I think that a lot of secret witches often report that they love to travel. And it not occurred to me before we started this conversation, before we even talked about it, that was a thing. Like, I think that is a pattern that shows up for the witch, that she loves to travel. And I'm wondering, I know this is completely off tangent to what you just shared, but was it here? I don't want to forget it. I'm wondering if you can speak, let me see if I can tie that into a question that's kind of related to the land. I guess where I'm kind of being called is like the land, it has medicine, and I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit to that as we open.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, immediately when you sort of think of traveling witches, perhaps once that meant, fly by night, women on brooms, sneaking off to parties. It's something a little bit different now, but for me, I think the idea of kind of land as both a mirror and medicine can really help us kind of reflect a little something either of us or what we might be seeking. And maybe we travel far and wide to kind of find those things.
Yeah.
But wherever we are, the land, when we walk the land with attention, we can see cycles, wonder, wounds, all kind of mirrored back at us. So sometimes there is a kind of an idea of seeking maybe a certain landscape, whether it's our homeland or somewhere that kind of calls to us, because that can help us invite that listening and connection, and find that remembering. But sometimes, as with all kind of quests or seeking, it's not always a straight line, as I've already attested to. So it can take some wandering. I think it can take some wandering. It can take some journeying into the unknown to walk and find the stories we're seeking, and maybe some answers as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I just love the idea of land as a mirror, as a remedy. In essence, that's how I mean, when I talk about as a remedy, I'm talking about often in this path. I talk a lot about archetypal remedies. That's kind of grounded in the lineage. Just for your information, it's grounded in the lineage of like homeopathy, because all of nature really is a mirror. So I absolutely love the idea that, as well as people being remedies as well, which is another part of how I see people, I feel like the land itself offers us so many mirrors. So I absolutely love what you're saying about the land being a mirror. And also, like, what is it? If we because often one of the things that comes up for witches is like they feel this kind of discontent at home. And I'm speaking from personal experience here, because I remember when I first kind of came into my witchy path, I remember going into a journey and my guide was kind of guiding us in, and she was like, "Okay, imagine you're out by this beautiful English oak." And I just started sobbing. I was like, "I don't want an English oak. I want my tree in Bali. Like, I want to be in Bali with a tree there." And I'm just reflecting on how I then started to work with that and be like, well, what does Bali represent? And so there's something in that, I think, because often we can so easily think, oh, well, I need to be in Bali to be happy. Whereas actually, often it's kind of just offering us a mirror for what we're seeking. I don't know if that's even making any sense. Or
Oh, absolutely.
Anything to speak to there, but.
And it's that idea of kind of what we can draw to the land, draw from the land. So we've long been drawing medicine and healing in a very physical sense, in the way of herbs and remedies, but also we have also always drawn stories from the land. We've been inspired by what's around us, and that can speak to things that inspire us, things that evoke fear or trepidation with us. So the idea of drawing from the land is, there is so much within the land to draw from, whether it is food, healing, story, and how those all kind of intertwine to sustain us, to nourish us in very different kind of ways. So,
yeah. Oh, I love that. And what I'm feeling as you say that is just how disconnected from the land we've been. I wonder if you can speak a little bit to that, because that feels so vital.
Absolutely. And it feels kind of more relevant than ever, perhaps. That as our natural world is shrinking, is in jeopardy from various, whatever, motorways, warehouses, shops and things, it's never felt more important to connect to what is truly precious to us and what is irreplaceable. Ancient woodlands, clean rivers and seas, they are irreplaceable, or certainly not replaceable within our lifetime. So it's that idea of being both connected now, but also to be good ancestors as well. But hopefully we can treat the earth with the respect and the kindness that it needs, so that we don't just, dig it all up for the sake of a new shopping mall. So it's never felt more important. It's never felt more important to connect to what matters, to what is powerful, and to remind ourselves of what we can lose. It's not just trees. It's not just woodland. It is an ecosystem. It is healing. It is story. It's history. It's ancestral magic. There's so much more at stake than just the trees that you can see or the birds. Is a lot, which it feels a lot. And when we kind of say like that, it's like, gosh, it's big. It's a big thing, and it's scary, and it's grief, isn't it? It's losing these kind of powerful ancient trees that once, cast shadows on our great grandparents, and it's a big thing to kind of face up to the possibility of losing these things. So it's never felt more important, I think, to connect to the natural world, but with a sense of hope and wonder and the beauty we can find right now in our lives, gazing out the window to the clouds, to the blue sky, to the trees. So it's really wonder and grief. It's that kind of balance of things together, and there can be beauty in that, as well as the kind of the big stuff.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the kind of polarity you're bringing in there, because I think we can so often think there's just one thing in isolation, rather than we can feel both the wonder and the beauty and the grief simultaneously. I was actually saying that the other day about my baby girl. There's so many threads I could pull here. I guess one part of me is curious, or I think the listeners will be curious to hear what you mean about the myth and story of the land. So there's a question there. There's also a question that's coming to mind about almost like, will people even be wondering why it is so important to connect with the land? Because I think what can happen as well for the secret witch who's listening is life can feel so busy. Like, we're pulled in all the different directions. And often I will say, go, if you're feeling overwhelmed, go and connect to a tree or, whatever it is, and go and walk the land. And even for myself, I know when I first started doing that and connecting in that way, I was like, why? What's the point in this? Like, what's gonna I don't understand, but I've got a million things to do. Why are you telling me to go and sit at a tree? So I'm wondering, I don't know, there's a few threads in there and I've forgotten what they are now, but is there anything that jumps out as I speak to that?
Certainly why it's important. I think it is so, it's never been easier, I think, to be disconnected from the natural world. We're in our double glazed houses, we've got our air conditioning, and I get it. It's temperate in here. It's easy to be in our little kind of safe spaces. And we've long kind of been journeying to this place. And for many generations, there's that, again, it's that dichotomy of light and dark. There was fear in the kind of the dark woods and the kind of the not tread paths. So there is that element of fear that we're facing when we connect to the natural world. But I suppose that's the word, is it? It's connection. It's listening. It's remembering our place in the web of the natural world and not seeing ourselves as separate or above or like the conqueror of the natural world, but being part of it. And that reminds us of both the fact that we are not above nature, we are not, kind of superior. We are all part of the kind of the cycles and the rhythms, and in turn that can help us with our kind of conscious choices, connecting to what really matters, connecting to cycles and rhythms that we can get lost from. And then that's often how we end up feeling disconnected, disenchanted, stressed and burnt out. Because if the only markers we are looking to are climbing the corporate ladder or getting our social media sorted, if there are only markers, then we really lose a lot of the kind of natural cycles that are something very different, a very different way to be. So again, it's that kind of the light and dark, the balance, and finding that harmony. And we can't do that without the natural world. So it is,
And
it's integral.
Oh, sorry, no, I thought you finished then. What I'm hearing in that, I guess, is something that I think the secret witch often feels is almost like the symptoms that are a sign that the land is calling us, if you like, is this sense of like deeper feeling of being disconnected. And I think so often that's something that the secret witch arrives here on listening to this feeling, is that sense of disconnection, manifesting as well in, as you said, in burnout, in stress, in overwhelm, in, all those kind of even physical symptoms, womb symptoms as well. I think often comes from this kind of disconnect to our innate natural rhythms, which the land can help with as well. And so, yeah, I'm really hearing that sense of like, it's so important for reconnection, like for reconnection to who we are. And I think that's vital in today's world, particularly.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's that the invitation, I suppose, to kind of slow down, to trust in the cyclical nature of things, of the kind of the seasons and our own growth, which can, again, land as mirror, can be reflected in the growth of the world around us. And then to bring it back to the kind of the myth and the story and the history is a reminder that people have walked this path before. You know, there are beautiful lights of memory and stories that, whilst being a different time, still speak very much to the things we are struggling with. That's not the right word. Journeying through. So grief, loss, love, desire, greed, conflict. The stories may be old, but they speak to exactly the same universal issues that we have as humans. And to be reminded of that in story is one beautiful element of it, but also the fact that these ancient magical places for centuries have evoked stories of sacredness and hope, and that the land holds these layers of stories for us to connect to in our own time is part of that beautiful journey of connection and finding our own way, finding our own sense of what magic and connection is to us, because it's different for everybody. And part of the journey is kind of finding our way and ultimately finding our power and connection within that. So
I love that so much. There's something there around like, what do we mean by the story that the land shows us, tells us stories? Like, do you have an example of that? I'd love to see if there's like a particular remedy that a particular piece of land has for us as a kind of an archetypal mirror for us, if there's anything that comes to mind.
The one that immediately comes to mind is Avebury Stone Circle, which is very close to me here. It's about a 15-minute drive. So very lucky to have it nearby. And the stories of Avebury are beautiful and wonderful. And a common one you'll hear in a sort of mythic, sort of more kind of folk tale one is that late at night, if you're very quiet, you can hear the stones sing, and they kind of sing with a certain energy. And some believe that it might be aliens, some believe it might be ancestors, some believe it's the specific makeup of the stones themselves. Archaeologically speaking, there is a sort of echoing that happens in the way that the stones are arranged. So there's a suggestion that during ritual, for example, you might have heard a certain echo of song and music. So that's the kind of the story. But then when people physically go to Avebury, a lot of people feel a certain energy when they connect to the stones, when they touch the stones. I've written in several of my books that my aunt can't go to Avebury because the energy is so much that it feels like her skin is burning, which evokes something of a joke in our family that she was once burned as a witch, which may or may not be a thing, or might just be a little bit of a joke. But so it's that idea that there's a kind of an element of the song and energy within story, but then also a very real experience that people feel when they go to Avebury. So it's that kind of blurring of the lines, and certainly a suggestion that people have long felt something when they go to Avebury, and then how they connect to that and how they convey that is different for everybody. So it might be a story, it might be a myth, it might be song, it might be just a personal ritual for you to go and be with the stones and to feel them and connect with them. It might be an invitation to go to Avebury at certain seasonal equinoxes or solstices. So there's sort of, the story is very fluid around Avebury, as it is many sacred spaces, and it can kind of change and move depending on kind of who you are and what you're seeking. So that's the story that I like about Avebury, that illustrates how it can connect to people in different ways, and an invitation, I suppose. There's no right or wrong way to feel the magic of Avebury. You can just go on a beautiful sunny day and have a pint of cider in the Red Lion pub. You can have a beautiful sacred overnight ritual, hoping to hear the ancient songs. there is an endless array of ways that people have and can connect to that magic. And that's the beauty of it. It's not about, and this, connects, I suppose, to The Secret Witch in a way that there's no one way to find magic. There's no one way to express it. It's not about kind of the performance. It's about kind of just feeling it within and trusting that your own way of connecting to magic doesn't have to be like anybody else's. If it's something that you feel within you and it brings you comfort, and that's your path, then that's it. That's all we need, and that's kind of rooting into our own sense of magic and power. So.
Yeah, I love that so much. There's what I'm hearing in that is this almost this sense of like the myth and tales and stories about lands. Again, like holds up a mirror for us to almost access lost parts of ourselves that have maybe we wouldn't have seen had we not visited that place and fell into that story. But what I'm also loving is, as you name that, because I think you could easily get kind of lost in a book about probably your book. You could go into a book and read those stories. But I'm also hearing is this sense of like, if you're feeling called to that story, to that myth, to almost like immerse yourself into it, it's also an invitation, almost like be embodied in being there and feel it as well. Does that feel true? Like, is that what you would?
Absolutely. And it's almost exactly what happened. I'm just looking for, hold on a minute. Oh, it's the text. During lockdown, I was absolutely drawn to some wild and wonderful tales of myth and folklore. And that became The Witch in the Wildwood, which is the book that came before Witch Country. But obviously we were in lockdown and I was inspired by all these beautiful stories, but I really wanted to kind of get out and connect to them physically, which is how we ended up with Witch Country, because there's kind of the stories are held within these beautiful books, but there's something really powerful about going to the places and walking the land. So, walking the land where very real women were accused of witchcraft. Right. Walking the land and connecting to stones that were once said to be women that danced on sacred days, to trees where cluties and wishes have been held and are held. So many different ways we connect with the archetype of the witch, and so many different ways. So kind of finding those stories was really special, and to kind of walk the land and connect to it in places where these stories were told, and nothing was kind of written down. It was just kind of they were whispered and sang and kind of repeated in rituals. So to go back to those places was really special. And yeah, so it was great to kind of come tumbling out of my house after lockdown and running into the wilds. Was great.
That's amazing. That is gorgeous. So that's the book would that be the book that tells you about all the different witchy lands that you visited, or is that your new book?
So The Witch in the Wildwood is very much a gathering of sort of stories of trees and the wilds and some really lovely embodiments of how we see the witch in the wild. So we will have heard in our childhood, we probably heard the story of the Baba Yaga, or in Hansel and Gretel, the witch in her gingerbread house. But then again, very real people foraged healing herbs and fruits and barks that were very real medicines. And then in the sort of more modern day, I kind of explore interesting characters like Sybil Leek, who used to live in the New Forest, and she was kind of part of the reinvention of witchcraft in the form of Wicca. So it's kind of the story of all the many ways we see the witch in the wild and that connection, because she's long been connected to kind of wild spaces. So that was a beautiful exploration. And then I was really keen to really get out there and meet. So I met with some modern day witches and priestesses and historians and a wonderful guy called Chris, who is a caver, and he goes deep underground and is so he was particularly fascinating. And I'm going off on the topic now, but I went to the Wookey Hole Caves, which is a wonderful example of the many ways you can find a witch. So within the Wookey Hole Caves, for those of you who don't know about Wookey Hole, there is people have lived around the Wookey Hole Cave since Neolithic times, so it is an absolutely ancient place where people sought shelter. And over the centuries, a whole host of amazing archaeological finds have been discovered, including things that speak very strongly to ritual. So a crystal ball was found within the caves, many remains of people, ritual objects that suggest that magic was held there. But also there are really old stories about the sounds that came from the caves, which was created by wind and water. But people thought it was the gods or the witches speaking to them. And then there are certain stalactites and stalagmites that people used to call the witch. They still do. They call them the witch, and various kind of. So it's the kind of the landforms, the sound, the history of people who have lived there. And then in the modern day, it is a neon lit tourist attraction where people dress up as witches, and it's very entertaining and it's kind of fun and light. And then a few years ago, Chris, my caving friend, he discovered with some of his caving friends, there was a whole host of witch marks, which are apotropaic markings to protect people from witches. So there's kind of a very real evidence that people feared the witches that dwelled within these caves. So it's kind of such a mix of sort of real people, myths, stories, charms and magic work, all within this one cave system, and modern day witches as well. And I got to speak to lovely Sarah Mooney, who was one of the she's one of the witches employed at Wookey Hole Cave. So it was a really good example of just within one place how many ways we could find magic and witches in kind of everything on the scale, from sort of entertainment and fun and a bit of whimsy to really serious fear and ritual and kind of everything in between. So I've wandered off topic a bit, but the Wookey Hole Caves were one of the places where it really kind of came together to me what the signs of what it was I was seeking, which was a lot of things, but also just the many ways specific special places like Wookey Hole Caves, like Glastonbury, like Avebury. There is always an infinite amount of story and magic to be held there, and it is a wonderful thing to even just scratch the surface of that. This is wonderful to journey with that, and something that is open to us all. We can all go to Avebury and admire the stones. We can all go to Wookey Hole Caves. So it's that kind of, like the natural world in general, it is accessible to us, in some sense or another, whether it is gazing at the clouds and the moon rising, whether it's selecting a favorite tree. So if you have a favorite tree, it's that idea that we don't need to be experts or priestesses or naturalists, or we can just be, and we can listen, and we can show respect to a space, and we can find magic there. So it's something that is available to us in some way, which like magic itself.
That's gorgeous, yeah. And I think that'll be so refreshing to so many listeners, because I think the Secret Witch particularly can often feel like there is a right way, with all the kind of the self-help world being like, okay, you should do this, this and this, and then you'll be healed. And it's like, no, actually there's no quick fix, but there is a whole like inner journey that we can take, through myth and story as well, particularly, and through connecting to the land that will help us just feel that connection to soul, connection to magic again. So I love that. There was something around the beauty of the darkness that is also very kind of present in what you share. Like there's and going back to what you said about grief as well, because I think we can also be tempted to want to just take the magic of a place, and we might go to these places and feel like all sorts of things. Like you say, there could be grief, there could be all that darkness, shadow, wounding coming up. And I'm wondering, like, were there any places that particularly helped you to face that? I know you've already spoken to that a little bit, but like, is there any particular place where you visited and it did kind of open up a wound? And how did that help you to work with that?
It's a really good question. I think the places that really were most complicated to visit were the places where real women suffered really awful things. So probably one of the most powerful places I went to was I went to Scotland, and I went to Torryburn in Five Witches, where the intertidal grave of Lilias Adey is on the shoreline, and it's one of the very, very few what you might describe as a witch's grave. There are few, if any, of those anywhere. So it felt very powerful to be there, but it's also a kind of, it is a fascinating story, and it is in its own way kind of enchanting, and in some ways even kind of fun and whimsical, like many stories of witches. When you think of the Essex witch hunts, every witch was accused of having kind of an imp or a familiar, and there's stories of, you know, little cats and kittens and rabbits dancing around, and it kind of does sound kind of, oh, this is kind of fun and whimsical. But then when you come to a place as kind of powerful as Lilias Adey's grave, it's a reminder of how we're trying to take the image of the witch and move forward with it, because there is very real, very obvious suffering and injustice and torture and mistreatment and prejudice. But now it's like, how do we take that? How do we take these ashes, and how do we build something upon that? So that's coming out in forms in the modern day of memorials for the women and men accused of witchcraft, as ceremony and remembrance of statues and sculptures, of artworks, of creative projects. It's how do we take this dark history? How do we remember? But then how can we take maybe a little something of magic and hope from that in moving forward? And there are no easy answers to any of that, but it's certainly something I try and sit with, especially in Scotland. Beside this, it's now an empty grave, because she was buried in this grave for fear of that she would rise up and haunt the local community. And in the end, the body was dug up for curios, basically. So the whole story is quite affecting, but it forces us to ask the questions about how are we going to face this past, and then how are we going to move forward with it.
That's gorgeous. Yeah.
So it's living with the light and the dark, isn't it? It's living with the dark past and the history. Yeah.
What came to me as you were saying there, because I think what we can often do, I mean, ultimately what you're describing there is coming face to face with the witch wound in many ways, which kind of lives unconsciously in many ways within the secret witch, and we don't kind of often come face to face with it. Often what will happen for the secret witch is she'll be like, oh yeah, I'm definitely here. Like, she'll feel the call to the land, she'll feel all the calls to the witch, but then kind of deny. I'm like, oh no, I'm just going to carry on in my life and do the thing that everybody expects of me, because there's fear. And I think in many ways, almost like going and facing that darkness with the land holding you, there's actually a really real beauty in that, because the land is also holding you as you're doing that. But like, there's something in that. It's like, because one of the principles that I work with is like cures like, similia simila burst, which is a homeopathic universal law of how healing works. And so for me, I think if we want to heal, we kind of want to make what's unconscious conscious. And so there's a real beauty in that story of what you said, like facing it, like going and being with it, allowing ourselves to feel. And then how do we move forward and embrace that aspect of us that maybe we've feared or shamed or, you know, whatever.
Absolutely. And actually the chapter where I go to Scotland and kind of meet with Lilias as much as is possible, there's a lot of theme around light and dark, and how sort of some of the trial records of Lilias and her trial, she speaks herself, and it is a rare thing to have kind of words of an accused witch, and she speaks about the words she was speaking. She would say, it's as true as the sun is in the firmament. So she was looking at the sun and being like, this is my truth. I'm telling you as much as I can the truth. And unfortunately, that didn't help her in the end. But it's even within the story, there is light and dark, and facing the wounds fostered. It's such a powerful story with Lilias, because this was during the kind of the Reformation in Scotland, where everyone was just utterly terrified. They were terrified of witches. They were terrified they were going to be accused of witchcraft. They were terrified they were going to be connected to witchcraft in some way. And this kind of little furore that happened in Torryburn was kind of a group of women who were so terrified, they started kind of accusing each other. And in the end, they all lost because pretty much everyone involved with the entire kind of mess of accusations ended up being accused of witchcraft. So it was a real mess of things to kind of unpick. And again, we're kind of exploring ideas of the witch wound. It's the idea of sort of people being so terrified that we end up kind of turning on ourselves, and the monsters people can become when they're terrified and cornered. And it's fascinating in both the kind of the people who were accused and the people who were accusing, and the kind of what can become of us when we are so scared. We have a tendency to kind of blame others and almost hope that we can kind of wrap all of our fears up in kind of one group of people and hope that that will kind of carry away all our troubles. And obviously that's not how it works. We have to face the dark for ourselves. And
There's something you said about how she spoke truth, and that feels really resonant, because I think ultimately that's what the witch is here to do. And in a world where we're so used to performing, like ultimately it feels to me like the witch is here to tell the truth, which also strikes a chord with me in terms of like the land being a mirror, because the land can't do anything but tell the truth as well. I wonder if you've got anything to speak to with that.
Yeah. It's always interesting, I suppose, to face this idea that the season, the earth, the world will keep turning, whatever it is that we do, like whether we connect these things or not. The world will continue, the kind of the wheel of the year will continue rolling through, and there can be comfort in that, but also evokes fear in us, I think, because all things pass. So we will, things will change and we will lose things, and that is just a kind of a universal part of the story. So we can either fight that, or we can accept this journey of ever changing, ever rolling through the wheel. So as we seek our magic and maybe our sense of peace, an empowerment in things we can change and the things we can't change, and because of acceptance of that kind of dichotomy of change and rhythm and cycles. I think that's part of finding and facing our light and our truth, I suppose.
I love that. Yeah, and there's something very cyclical about that as well, in terms of like the land helps us to, I guess, reconnect to that cyclical nature within ourselves. I'm wondering, actually, it's just a random curious question, but like, did you have particular seasons that you visited particular places in?
Yes, so I actually follow the wheel of the year in the book. So I go to a kind of a place each month. I'm literally opening the books. My memory, honestly. Yes, so in October, so on Halloween, around Samhain, I went to Manningtree in Essex, which is the kind of the home of the infamous Witchfinder General. And the idea was it was kind of the close of the season, close of the year, and things were kind of growing dark. So there's this kind of sense of the horrors of what very real people did. So I was kind of drawn to that idea. But then in kind of contrast, around springtime, I went out seeking witch hares and fairies, and I went wassailing and horse dancing. So there was kind of a lightness within kind of spring. So certainly I sort of was inspired by the seasons. I go to kind of Dartmoor in winter because of all kind of the mists and the frosts and everything. So I was definitely inspired by the season, but there's also a few that kind of just kind of happened, and just kind of got fairy led on certain kind of quests. So it's a little bit of both, I think, which perfectly describes the whole journey, really. Like I had a plan, didn't always end up sticking to it, but such is the way when you kind of follow paths of magic. You have to kind of be open to inspirations and kind of strange things that might happen.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. I guess one question that also came to me is like, when women are kind of reading your book or, wandering just in even their local woods, like what is it that, what do you hope that they kind of take away from that, and experience and feel, and what's your kind of hope for that?
If it was anything, it's that wherever you are, you can start where you are. There is magic to be found wherever you find yourself. And sort of for my path and kind of my magic, I kind of regularly dip in and out of questioning, do I call myself a witch? Like, do I consider myself a witch? And part of my personal journey and kind of the questions I'm asking when I write is kind of a knowledge that I'm kind of sharing my work, I'm sharing my journey, but I also accept fully that kind of I will never have all the answers, and feeling empowered to share my words and my work despite never having the answers. And as I walk around places like Avebury and Silbury Hill and the Long Barrows, I'm reminded that the land teaches us to slow down, to trust in the cyclical nature of things, but of also embracing doubt and our constant growth as people. And ancient places remind us that mystery and magic is not something to be solved, it's something to be lived with. So the land is holding these stories, these silences, these songs, and it's not rushing to reveal itself all at once. And that can kind of remind us to be patient with ourselves and to know that we're never going to have all the answers, and embracing that way of finding our power within that uncertainty and within that unknowing, because that's the cycle, isn't it? Things are always changing. We never know everything, and we have to find our power within that space.
So I'm hearing the land is, again, going back to that theme of like it's offering us that self-illumination, that access to our inner world, as well as the outer, like holding us in the outer world in many ways as well. But what I'm hearing of your gift is like almost just like bringing the land alive through words, so that people can then feel that for themselves and feel what it brings alive for them. So yeah, I love all of the work that you're sharing.
Thank you. Yeah, it's very much kind of I think I said it earlier about starting where you are, but we can all we can all turn off our phones maybe and just listen to the land, because it's always speaking in some way, and it's not always easy to switch off, but the magic can arrive not through effort, but through presence and patience and time. And that is something we all have. That's something we can all journey with. So it's very much a kind of it's just one big party, babes. Just one big party.
I love that.
Everyone could be part of it.
I love it. I love that. Could offer, say, one small ritual or invitation for the listener to kind of reconnect with the enchantment of the land. Like, what would that be? Would you have one particularly?
I have. I mean, it's probably like all my rituals about as simple as things get. But
we love simplicity.
Simplicity is
no
my
right or
favourite. So at the very end of the book, to sort of bring it to a close, I go and watch the sunset at the equinox. So watching the sunset would definitely be one. And if it's okay, I'll just read the last paragraph. So I'm sat just watching the sunset over the valley. Lights sparkle on in homes through the valley, leading to a warm glow of the city. And I think I'll just wait a little longer for the first stars to appear. And tomorrow it starts again. The sun will rise, and with it the potential of a fresh start and new adventures, with the delightful prospect that a hint of magic may be waiting somewhere just past the edges of the horizon. Myth and lore allows us to walk through both enchantment and history for accused witches, and just maybe for these shadowy souls to rest and for their stories to fly. I am grateful for the adventures, big and small, that have taken me around the British Isles in search of all things wonderful and witchy. This land is magic, I think, as I ready myself for home. How lucky we are to walk upon it, even if it is just for a short spell.
Oh, that's absolutely gorgeous. I'm really happy you shared that with us.
So I suppose the ritual is go out and watch the sunset.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's gorgeous. The other thing I just want to, I think we're kind of coming to full circle, but I just wanted to reflect that the level of devotion that you must have had to kind of create and birth that book, like the journey that you went on. And I guess that's something that witches can find a struggle in their busy lives, is that kind of sense of like commitment too. So I also love that you shared like there's no right way. You can do this really simply. And I'm just wondering if you want to share anything before we complete on that.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for pointing it out. It's lovely that that kind of comes across, because certainly whenever I'm writing about witches, I feel a huge weight of responsibility to get it right, I suppose, to kind of tell their stories right, which is almost impossible because we have so little is left, that it has to be a kind of patchwork of things. It has to be the few words that we have, the few memorials maybe, but then maybe I have to go to Manningtree and walk the paths that they walked and go to the places where they kind of saw the end of their lives, because we have just tiny glimpses, and kind of stitching it all together, it has to come from different threads. So I do feel a huge pressure to do my best to tell the story, again, whilst accepting that I don't have all the answers. It'll never be perfect, but to try, I suppose, and just again start where you are. I think I said that before, but to start where I am, to listen, and to kind of share the stories and the many stories as best I can, is part of kind of my magic and my offering. And as we all seek to kind of embrace our inner witches, it's about finding the sparks and weaving them together in our own way, and allowing that to be part of our ongoing journey of weaving and of wonder and of witchcraft.
Yeah, that's gorgeous. Yeah, and just brings me right back to that piece about we can literally start in our own land, which I eventually inevitably did, rather than going back to Bali, although I did later go to Bali again. And it was just so rewarding, like just getting to, because I was also in a new place. I'd moved home, and so like it helped me to cultivate a relationship with my local land as well, which felt so powerful. And now I think if I if I moved, I'd be like, oh no, my tree, what am I going to do? But yeah, it's also quite synchronistically timed, because I'm kind of debating at the moment whether to go traveling to Costa Rica. But then I was like, I also feel like I want to go to Cornwall, or say local in England. And so it's really interesting, the timing of this conversation. I've got plenty of food for thought now.
Yeah,
What
absolutely.
do I want to live?
And wherever you end up, wherever you go, there will be magic there, and there'll be stories there. So it's that lovely sense of wherever you wander, there's magic to be found.
I love that. I'm going to think about it in a whole new light now. Gorgeous. Thank you so much. What I'd love for you to share now is what you're working on, what's coming up for you. I know you've got your book, and also where people can find you, so that we can include it all in the show notes.
Lovely. Thank you so much. So so the next book coming out, which is my wanders around, is called Witch Country: Seeking the Witch in the British Landscape. So that's this one here. So I'm going kind of just full tilt on social media about the book. And you can find me on Instagram at Yoga for Witches, or This is Witch Country. So those are my two places on Instagram where I'm showing pictures of the books and my general wanderings around and my general adventures with things. So do come say hello and see where I'm wandering next, because there is I'm continuing my wanderings. So even though the Witch Country book is now sort of in kind of forged in ink, there are many adventures to come, and I document my adventures on my own podcast called Witch Country. So you can kind of, again, hear what I'm up to, where I've got lost, where I've wandered into. And it'd be lovely to journey with you all. It's always lovely to share the stories.
The Wandering Witch. I will be listening along. That's gorgeous. And also just even the symbolism of like the witch on her broom. Like, of course she wanders. Of course she flies to different places all over. And that's gorgeous.
There was a moment when I kind of finished the book, and it was like seeking the witch in the British landscape. And I was just like, is it me? Am I the witch in the British landscape? So yeah,
Yeah.
if nothing else, I am a witch wandering around the British landscape. So
The
that's
Wandering Witch.
one to
Yeah.
start with. Yeah.
I love it. That's amazing. Thank you so much. I've loved this conversation, and it's been, great to have you on the show. I appreciate you sharing your time and wisdom.
It's been an honor. Thank you so much for having me.
I absolutely loved that truthful episode with Sarah. Here are my takeaways. The land, aka the wild, acts as a living mirror, reflecting our inner wounds, wonder, and wisdom. Places are remedies. We don't need to travel far to find magic unless we choose to. We belong right where we are, and we can take steps to reconnect to ourselves in our local lands. Stories, myths, and folklore live within the land, waiting to be heard. There is no one right way to be a witch or walk the land with reverence. However we do, we can learn and heal. Places of grief and wounding hold powerful medicine when we're willing to listen and face the truth. And magic begins with presence. Start where you are, let the land speak to you. You might be surprised what you learn.